Chikela Lugrati. This is officially my first Insta Live session with you guys this year. So it is safe to say Happy New Year! Happy New Year, everyone. I hope this year is a great one for us and I hope we've been enjoying it so far. And don't forget to please stay safe all the time. That's very important. Today we're going to talk about something really important, something super crucial. I mean, it's no longer news that Nigeria's financial services sector is failing to meet the needs of the single most important group in its agricultural value chain, and perhaps the entire economy, smallholders. Globally, smallholders manage over 60% of the world's estimated 500 million small farms and provide for over 80% of the food consumed in a significant part of the developing world. So while some public and private sectors agree on the importance of developing the agricultural food chain or the agricultural value chain, there still seems to be some sort of underinvestment when it comes to the challenges facing smallholders in the SME agri-food sector. So we have issues like affordable or like issues that they cannot access affordable finance, issues like low productivity and regulatory burden. All of this still loom at large and makes it almost impossible for smallholders to grow their businesses from micro businesses to small businesses and from small businesses to perhaps medium businesses. And so bearing all of this in mind, today we get to talk about affordable financial services for smallholders. And joining me in the conversation today is Dr. Debisi Araba. He's a Managing Director at Africa Green Revolution Forum and a thought leader across the African agricultural sector. He's a public policy and strategy specialist as well. So today's conversation is really important and I do not want any one of us to miss any part of it. So I'm just going to pin the topic so that we all can know what we're talking about. Hi, hello sir.
Hi, Adetuke. How are you?
How are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. Sorry, just like you, this is my first Instagram Live, so I wasn't sure how to get on. So I had been on since you started, but I tried to figure out, what button to press to get in there. But I'm glad I'm here now.
Thank you so much for joining us.
It's a pleasure.
And Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you.
Oh, great. So, I already made some facts established at my intro, and I was talking about how smallholders are very important to the agricultural value chain, and in fact, the entire economy. I mean, they get to provide for about 80% of the food consumed in developing world. So that shows just how very important they are. And with all of these challenges, I mean, that they still go through, it's so worth it discussing affordable financial services for smallholders. So let's talk a bit about you. So can you tell us a bit about yourself, particularly with regards to your work at African Green Revolution Forum?
Sure. Thank you very much. Good afternoon or hello, everyone. My name is Debisi Araba. I'm the Managing Director of the AGRF. The AGRF is the world's largest convener on inclusive agriculture transformation for Africa. Within the AGRF, we bring together all partners, everybody working in the agri-food sector. So we have governments, we have the private sector, all the way from smallholder SMEs, because I don't want to say smallholder, it's not just farmers, but everyone at the SME level in the agri-food sector, all the way to large-scale commercial. We also have, of course, development partners, donor partners, multilateral financial agencies, development agencies such as the African Union, the AU NEPAD agency, for example, not just African-based, but globally based, African-focused institutions. Mm-hmm. And what we do is we work to ensure that we can help accelerate the transformation of African agriculture. And by that I mean foster a public sector-enabled, private sector-led process.
According to the Keda Amanis, 13.8 million Nigerians will be facing food shortage prices between June and August 2021. But then, in your opinion and from your experience, of course, what measures do you think is important to take to avert this from happening? And what roles can smallholders play?
Now, we need smallholder farmers, or we need the agri-food sector to be more productive and more competitive. First of all, because we produce less, people are going to pay more for the food that's been produced. But to supplement that, you need to import. Of course, then comes the macroeconomic side of things, where government has shut down borders and you've banned the imports of certain staples. And so if you cannot supplement demand through imports, what you have is an increase in malnutrition, of course, increase in prices of goods, and increase in unaffordability. Of course, we saw that in the CPI, the Consumer Price Index. Food inflation is almost at an all-time high. It's a double-digit percentage points. So we can see that the price of food is getting higher. Everyone who's listening to this, at least who purchases food, can attest that month on month, year on year, between January 2020 and January 2021, it's more expensive now to buy the same unit of goods to consume. And so that means the price of food is higher. Now, what are we trying to do to sort of dampen that? The immediate thing to do is increase productivity, increase supply. Okay,
so that brings me to asking this, because you were heavy on saying that for us to combat inflation, then the supply must increase. But what do you think are the challenges that smallholders, what are the challenges they go through when operating or when they're trying to scale up?
Right now, you have access to multiple sources of finance at different rates, at different lending rates, and not everyone has access to the information on how you access the finance. And that creates, that asymmetry of information, creates this a tiered level of access where only people who know, can gain access to preferential lending. The other side is the high rate of the high interest rates. If you can improve the value proposition of a business, then you increase the chance of that business returning a profit on capital. And that is an incentive to bring down the lending rates. One of the things I love about digital innovations today is that it's creating a new class of borrower and a new class of lender. So for example, Piggy Bank, PiggyVest, and the other fintech solutions or startups out there are helping to improve access to finance at a micro level.
Of course, it's an established fact that smallholders are the backbone of the agricultural sector. But then you would also agree with me that it's almost not anyone's dream per se to be a farmer. And that's almost because you see that just about 27% of them live above the poverty line of $1.90 a day. So this seems almost discouraging. I mean, you're in charge of making everyone feed, and then yet you're not properly taken care of. It's almost like you're poor. So what role do you think the government can play in improving the farmers' livelihoods and, of course, their access to financial services? I know you touched on it a bit, but I just need us to discuss more about it.
The government's role, broadly speaking, is to create that enabling environment. What is the government's role in this? One of the things the government can do is not to make what is already a complicated and difficult sector even harder, right? So invest in infrastructure. Don't make it, don't make the life of everybody in the agri-food sector harder than it should be. They should focus on productivity. If you can build those roads, ensure that people have access to power, affordable power, ensure people have access to ICT services, ensure that the cost of borrowing, or at least the cost of financial transactions, is minimal and not eating away at their margins. Improve the margins of these SMEs. And so there's a lot the government can do. And then, of course, there are the policy levers that the government can pull. Government can provide either tax incentives, tax holidays, or even trade and market incentives, because again, that's another big issue, right? So for the producers, for people who are in the production end of the agri-food systems, the market asymmetry or asymmetry in market information. You don't have access to price discovery mechanisms, and so aggregators can buy on the cheap, and you are not sure what is a reasonable and competitive price to charge for what you're producing, and so you are losing out on value. So government can figure out those mechanisms that improve not just the enabling environment, but improve the competitiveness and productivity.
But you would also agree with me that the onus doesn't just lie with the government, and they're not the only ones to ensure that this sector thrives. So what role do you think that private sector players can also play in empowering smallholder farmers?
I think there needs to be a commitment to be globally competitive. And when I say that, I'm talking about the entire agri-food ecosystem. So it's not just farmers or aggregators or processors or retailers. I'm talking people who provide financial services, people who provide mechanization services, people who provide trading, all the middle folk in between all the different parts of the value chain, people who import, people who export. Demand more of yourselves, acquire know-how, and be world-class. And I think ultimately there needs to be a will to want to be globally competitive.
Based on your experience, how can African governments encourage public sector innovation that improves food production, achieves food security, which is very important, and economic growth?
We need to see governments deploy more innovation in their approach to transforming the agri-food sector. We have, I think, across the continent, you will find, and I think most of you will agree with me, that there's a vibrancy in the entrepreneurial space. A lot of private sector entrepreneurs are trying new things, trying new ideas. We're seeing, fintech. We're seeing logistics service providers such as Kobo 360 and Lorry Systems. So we're seeing innovation in the private sector space. What we would like to see is that same energy coming into the public sector space.
In your opinion, would you say that there are certain challenges that are cross-cutting between smallholder farmers and other stakeholders within the value chain?
As in similar challenges?
Yes.
Well, I would say that there are macroeconomic challenges that would affect everyone, right? So issues of insecurity. Insecurity affects us all. Poor infrastructure affects us all. Inflation affects us all. So I think in the macroeconomic space, of course, there are lots of things that affect everyone, regardless of your size of the scale that you're operating or the point of the agri-food sector you're operating in. It affects us all. So there's lots of things to be done. Not everything will be fixed at the same time, but I think there needs to be focus. The government needs to, pick the areas that they really want to transform, double down, and make sure they fix it.
Okay, guys, that's where we draw the curtains on today's conversation. We discussed affordable financial services for smallholders, and he touched on some very important things. And the very first thing I want to reiterate to all of us, in one of the things he said, which I find very important and quite profound, he talked about farmers having the mentality of being global. This is not just about wanting to provide for Nigeria, but be globally competitive. Know that you're not just producing or growing things or crops and rearing animals for just Nigeria. Look beyond the shores of the country. So that he said, and that's very important. And he also said something. He said something about the government wanting to create an enabling environment. I think that's very important. I mean, he gave an example of during the lockdown, during the COVID-19 pandemic, which of course we're still in. But then during that lockdown, it was almost impossible for farmers to, transport goods and produce from where they were grown down to where they're going to be consumed. So infrastructure is very key. It's so important. And this because farmers were not able to move certain crops, they recorded high post-harvest losses. I mean, and that's so sad. And of course, when you see that the supply is not enough, definitely there will be inflation. So this again, it touched on the government creating an enabling environment, and of course, not making life harder for farmers than it should be. And also, he said something that touched on both public and private sector, having the mind to make it work, wanting to say that, you know what, this agricultural value chain, we're going to protect it and we're going to make it thrive. Only then, when people are conscious of that, only then will they be able to put actionable plans. Now, it's not just about setting goals and saying that, oh, we want to achieve this, but how are you going to achieve it? So this talks to everyone, and that's where we draw the curtains on today's episode of The Voices on Insta Live Session. Thank you so much. I am Aditi Kelalo Kumati.